the future of the Park Special School, and I call on Councillor Smith, portfolio holder for Children's, to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would first of all like to recognise that this is an emotive issue, and this is acknowledged in the report. The proposals are well laid out in a paper before you. There is also the results of the consultation and the conclusions of the independent reviewer. I will try and highlight the salient issues in the report. I think, as we all know, the Parks Special Nursery School is a maintained nursery school and supports children with moderate and severe learning difficulties, as well as support for speech, language and communication, autism and physical disabilities. At present, the children at the parks, less than 5, are reception age children, and therefore outside the age range that the parks is set up for. The number of children accessing the parks provision has declined over the last 6 years. There is a table on pages 8 and 9 that quite clearly shows this decline. This also shows that the parks has supported children through reception and even into year 1. There are no children accessing a special nursery place this academic year, and Rutland County Council is not aware of any children of nursery age needing specialist nursery provision from September 2024. This decline in numbers prompted a review of the Council's early years pathway. Was it either fit for purpose, or should there be a plan for a future delivery model? That review started in 2021 and was by a group of experienced independent SEND, special education needs and or disabilities professionals, which took place over 2.5 years. It identified that there were issues with the operational sustainability of the parks due to its size, scale and expense. The designated specialist provision, DSP, at Oakham CV Primary School provides additional educational support so that children's special needs can be met within a mainstream school setting rather than a separate special school. This is a national and local aim. Oakham CV Primary School designated special provision offered 20 places for children with educational healthcare plans whose primary needs are autistic spectrum disorder and moderate learning difficulties, but historically did not offer places for reception year children. From September 2023, a further 4 places of DSP were commissioned, and this now provides education from reception age to the end of year 6. It is intended that there will be a further 4 additional places from September 24. However, this will be compromised if the park remains open, because the funding will be subsumed within the funding required to keep the parks operating. That funding is over £250,000 per year, and that would be the case even if there were no children in the parks. Additionally, the space currently utilised by the parks would be required to support the expansion of the primary DSP. So the options are: option 1, to continue with the current arrangements, but this would reduce the opportunity of young children to engage in educational, social and emotional offer access with their peers within a local mainstream early education setting. So option 2 is closure of the Parks Special Nursery School end of summer term 2024. This would enable funding to be utilised more effectively to better meet the wider needs of children with SEND. This is therefore not a cost-cutting exercise, but a repurposing of monies. And this option would also be building on the already strengthening offer across the mainstream sector. In 2019, Rutland Schools Forum SEND Recovery Plan triggered development of the SEND and Inclusion Early Years Pathway. This improved early years pathway has invested in a significant program of training and resources to promote inclusive practice across Rutland's early years and childcare provisions, give staff specialist skills to support children with SEND. They are supported by a specialist SEND early years teacher to support early years providers. From 2021, by a specialist, by a speech and language therapeutic senior practitioner and an early years specialist emotional and mental health teacher. The aim of this is to support children with emerging needs to thrive in a mainstream setting and not escalate into a more specialist support. These initiatives are already having a tangible impact on confidence in SEND practice for practitioners. There has been great feedback received from the Early Education and Childcare Survey, which was of 100 parents and carers completed in September 2023. Additional therapeutic support is planned for 2024. The therapeutic support is for children, and support will also be given to parents, carers, and their families. This is all being backed up by the Ofsted CQC inspection in May 2023 that found that children and young people in Rutland benefit from an early and effective identification of their additional needs. This provides for the effective identification of any unmet needs. High quality inclusion support for practitioners in the early years provides them with the confidence to identify and assess children's needs. I would add, Rutland was only one of 4 local authorities to receive the highest grading. I would like to move on to the consultation. There was a public meeting held on the 1st of November. This was well attended. I also attended. The suggestion of an independent reviewer was suggested from the floor, and the Director of Children's Services agreed that it was a good idea. There were 80 respondents. I have read them all. These were reviewed by the independent reviewer. A parent carer herself. She has worked as a parent participation consultant nationally for a number of years, as well as being an associate of the charity Contact for Families with Disabled Children. She labelled or graded the respondents in 3 categories: green, a concerned citizen who may have some knowledge or experience of this complex issue; amber, respondents has had a relationship with the parks, perhaps directly or indirectly; or red, of which there were 10, the respondent may be directly impacted by any decision regarding the park's special nursery, or may have a solution which should or has already been considered by Rutland County Council. She carefully analysed all representations and concluded that no viable alternative to closure had been put forward by respondents. The final report supports the proposal to proceed with closure of the parks and make more effective use of the wide-ranging resources available to families, such as Rutland's Family Hub, Early Help Service, and other education providers. I would like to read her conclusion. I think it's a very good summary and sums up nicely the issues. Closing any much loved and valued provision was always going to be a motive. However, on reading responses, the large majority were talking about the experience of pupils who went to the Parks Special Nursery School some years ago. There were only a very few who had current experience of the parks as it is now, and I feel more weight should be given to the responses of these people. It is my understanding that families of children who may have been candidates for the parks, as with all Rutland resident children who are identified as potentially requiring additional support, are currently being supported by officers of Rutland County Council while going through the Education, Health and Care Plan process. All those children have been recently diagnosed, and this will continue even after a decision regarding the future parks is made. This is a statutory process that all councils must adhere to. The recent local area Ofsted identifies that this is a successful approach in Rutland. I looked carefully through the responses and found nothing to indicate that the consultation was not done in a lawful way, or that there were any innovative solutions given or suggested to ensure that the situation in the parks should be changed. I'd just like to make some personal reflections on the responses. One of the ones that came through, a number of comments, that the officers and Rutland County Council in general is unfeeling and uncaring. In the few months I have been a portfolio holder for Children's Services, I've been impressed. The directors and frontline staff are sensitive to the problems that parents face. They strive to do their best that they can in the face of increasing demand and limited funding. They worked hard to obtain grants, and through those efforts we have the SEND recovery plan and the direct delivering better value. And as I've already mentioned, the Ofsted report certainly recognises this good work. Some of the comments are very heartfelt, and what comes across are the difficulties that families have, particularly the neurodiverse disorders. I can, to a certain extent, understand and emphasise that a child has disabilities on a family. One response stood out to me. The respondent commented, "I am old enough to remember babies born victims of thalidomide. I am also old enough. My sister was affected by thalidomide. She had the typical limb defects caused by the drug. Although I was young, I can well recall the distress and difficulties in the family, particularly from my parents. Despite her disability, she did well in mainstream schooling. Sadly, she died from terminal bowel cancer in her mid-40s. Behind the disability, and I accept that not all disability is obvious, there is a person and a family. Rutland County Council's ambition on SEND children, as stated in the report, is to focus on their abilities, not their disabilities. So in summary, the Park Special Nursery is no longer viable to falling numbers. Due to falling numbers, I should say. There has been a significant increase in resources for early years provision, resulting in improved provision for SEND children. The money saved will be repurposed to benefit SEND children in the mainstream setting of Rutland schools. I would remind us that we are a corporate parent responsible for all children in their care. The recommendation is that Cabinet considers the outcome of the consultation and the feedback from the independent reviewer and approves the closure of the Park Special Nursery with effect from the end of the academic year, August 2024. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith has read the recommendation. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. So the recommendation is made and seconded. Therefore, I can open the item to discussion and debate. Do I have anybody wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please? Councillor Wise, please.
It's made clear in the report that there are sufficient places in the mainstream setting for the children who would have otherwise gone to the parks. But as the children who would have attended the parks will require additional support to access mainstream, are there sufficient qualified staff in the mainstream settings to support them?
Councillor Smith, please.
Yes, thank you. The annual childcare sufficiency duty report, which is spring 2023, as you say, Councillor Wise, that we do have sufficient childcare places. There's 598 places apparently, but there are 238 vacant places, so there's plenty of room. There has been extra support. I mentioned that the speech and language therapy, the SEND early years teacher, the emotional mental health support, and as I also mentioned, this will continue. So into 2024, if the resources are forthcoming to support the children, families, and carers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I notice a repeated comments in the consultation, which is basically, has Rutland County Council in recent times made it more difficult for parents to actually apply for the parks?
Councillor Smith.
You will notice in the report from the lady who reviewed all the responses, she could find no evidence of this at all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, regarding the financial implications, are there any circumstances in which the parks could be made viable?
Again, this came up in the respondents who gave some suggestions. One was, could the parks be used during the holidays and evenings as a holiday club to enhance provision in the area? Due to staffing issues and operational issues, the independent reviewer thought this was not possible. Could outside local authorities have access to the parks? It was thought that they would, there would be plenty of applications. In fact, there have been none. So I think that answers your question, I hope, Councillor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor Ellison.
Councillor Smith, it's something I'm very interested in and very detailed, but the one thing that I'm interested in is the evidence that SEND children do as well in mainstream as they would be looked after separately.
Yes, it's a good question. I've emphasised that the mainstream setting would be good for children with SEND. And I have looked into it, and there are a number of studies an increasing number of studies that suggest SEND children do better in mainstream education. A 2020 study by the University of Cambridge, 2021 study by the University of Manchester, and 2022 study in the University of Oxford. So all august bodies. I could go into more detail, but that I think that should satisfy you with that answer. Thank you
Very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other comments or questions? Well, I'll make a comment then. A number of us will have felt some angst over the decision that we're going to be making on this, not just because of all the comments that we received from parents, carers and others to the consultation, which I know we've all read and thought about. But also because a number of us have got direct experience of living with children with special educational needs. And as Councillor Smith said at the beginning of his presentation, it's always emotive. It's emotive when you're dealing with children anyway, let alone those who've got additional needs. And we as a council have to be sensible in the use of public money, and what's before us isn't actually about savings, it's about redirecting resource to be more effective. But I think one of the most powerful arguments for adopting this recommendation is the last point that Councillor Smith has been speaking about, and that is the evidence that children do better when they are in mainstream education. And I think that more than anything else points to supporting this recommendation. It has been proposed and seconded. Reminder for those watching and listening, it is that Cabinet considers the outcome of the consultation and feedback from the independent reviewer and approves the closure of the Parks Special Nursery School with effect from the end of the academic year, August 2024. All those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If residents who are in the audience have come for that item and wish to leave now, I'll pause for a moment to give you an opportunity to do that. If you're here actually to listen to a later item, then that's great, but entirely up to you. Thank you.